Today is, of course, the 50th anniversary of Red Skelton's iconic Pledge of Allegiance. And before we begin, I would like to take care of a few things. If you have cell phones, please take them out, turn them off, or turn them on silent, just so we don't have any unwanted beeps or buzzes during the program. I'd also like a special thank you to the sponsors of our exhibit and our year of the pledge, and that is Knee House Lumber. David, I think, is here. David, thank you very much. And also a sponsor for this event is the Vincent's Tourism Bureau. So thank you very much to the Vincent's Tourism Bureau as well. This is going to be an energetic event, so a few times we may ask you to come to your feet and join us in the national anthem or join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So just be prepared that a few times we may ask you to stand. Before we post the colors, we are going to play the national anthem after we post the colors, and I'd like to just take a moment to dedicate the national anthem to Dr. Philip Summers. He was instrumental in getting the museum going, and one thing that he always did at every event that he ever hosted was started off with the national anthem, and so we thought it was very appropriate that in his honor we start this event with the national anthem as well. And now I'd like to introduce the Knights of Columbus, 4th degree Knights, who will be posting the colors.
So thank you, gentlemen. Mark Hill, I'm chairman of the Red Skelton Museum Foundation Board, and it's always been a secret desire of mine to follow the Knights of Columbus and Bill Marsh in something other than a parade. So I've accomplished that goal tonight. One of the nice advantages of being of a certain age, let's just say I'm a baby boomer, is that I remember this happening 50 years ago. So if I'm doing the math right, I would have been in high school, and my family always watched the Red Skelton show, and so I do have distinct memories of hearing his famous remarks, and it's really a unique pleasure for me to be president of the board during this important time in the celebration of Red Skelton's life. And as Ann mentioned, there were several people I would be remiss without mentioning here tonight. One is Phil Summers. I distinctly remember the day that Phil took me on a tour of the collection. This was long before we had the wonderful Mr. Kratzner here and expert people in putting out these beautiful displays that you see today. And I went through room after room after room of the most amazing collection of stuff that I'd ever seen in my entire life. Anything from drawers full of eyeglasses to scripts to you can't imagine the things that Red Skelton collected in his lifetime. And so to imagine at that point, a number of years ago, to be where we are today with such a wonderful museum and such wonderful celebrations that are occurring now in honor of Red Skelton is really amazing to me. And then following Phil, and of course right on together with Phil was C. James McCormick and the family and the foundation. And if any of you knew C. James, you knew that if you were a friend of his, that meant that at some point he was going to tag you on the shoulder and say, "You're it." And so he did that to me several times, and he truly was a great mentor of mine. And so when he tagged me several years ago to be chairman of this board, Jim's somebody who didn't say no to. Equally as important in that short list is Pat Summers, and Pat was, after Jim retired from the board, Pat took his place. And so I've literally been standing on the shoulder of giants in my term as president of this board. And so I would like to mention we have several board members that are here in attendance with us tonight: John Bogue, and Rick Lindenberg, and Nancy Hensel, and President Chuck Johnson, and Mayor Yoakum are all on our board, so we can give them a nice round of applause for their service to the board. Of course, we couldn't do what we do without our wonderful donors. We have a number of contributors, both corporate and individuals and families, that have helped support this great effort. And final mention to the staff. We have such a wonderful staff, including Ann and Mark and others that work here both as paid employees as well as volunteers, and their work is immeasurable and continues to tell the great story of Red Skelton. So one of our last partners I would obviously have to mention is that we are on the campus of Vincent University. Been very fortunate to have great leadership here, and we're continuing that tradition. I'd like to introduce President Chuck Johnson.
Thank you, Mark. Please allow me to add my welcome to everyone here this evening and wonderful job on the national anthem. This is actually, you know, Vincent University is blessed to be in such a wonderful community that has so many historic roots and so much to share with the rest of the world. And the Red Skelton Museum and Red Skelton Performing Arts Center are jewels in the city, jewels of this community, and things I think we should take special pride in, because it just make a difference in the types of lives of our students and the lives of our community and those who spend the time to come and view the wonderful collection and exhibits in the museum. Red Skelton obviously did not attend Vincent University, but he literally grew up nearby, just across the stone's throw, literally from the campus. And I would say Red has a lesson to continue to teach our students today, many of whom I hope will take time to go through the museum and learn about Red's legacy. And the first is that he grew up from modest and very humble beginnings to become something of a self-made person. He worked hard. He made sure that he took his opportunities and made the most of them. Things that we try to instill, values that we try to instill in our students every day. And the second is that he never really gave up on his roots. He always stayed connected to the place where he felt was home. And certainly Vincennes was special with Red, and Vincennes University as a part of Vincennes also sees that as part of our legacy as well. And then finally, as we know, Red did not abandon his values. He remained true to the kind of comedy that we would all call family comedy today. And I think it's important for people to find that centeredness and stay close to it as they go through life. And so I think Red's messages and his legacy and his modeling for our students today is as relevant as it ever been. And so thank you all for coming out this evening, and we look forward to continuing to have the opportunity to be a partner with the Red Skelton Museum Foundation for this wonderful facility and the great resource that we have here in this community. Thank you.
Hello again. I'd like to talk just a little bit about the exhibit that we have put together at the museum, including my partner in crime down here, Mark Kratzner, who's videoing this. He's really, I guess, the brains behind the operation of getting the exhibit together, because he's the one that lives in the archive room, and Mrs. Skelton sends us boxes and boxes and boxes all the time. And you think, Mrs. Skelton? But yes, Mrs. Skelton is 81 years old. She lives in Palm Desert, California, and she visits here on a regular basis, and she calls us several times a week just to check on the museum and see how it's doing, and is just so proud and so pleased with everything that's been going on at the museum. And she sends artifacts all the time, and so we're always making new discoveries. And that is kind of what has led us to create these temporary exhibits that we put up, is to share other aspects of Red Skelton's life. And when we realized that this year was going to be the 50th anniversary of probably one of the most famous things that Red Skelton ever did, I think that a lot of people, if you do ask them about Red Skelton, they do remember him for his Pledge of Allegiance, as well as his comedy, of course, but his Pledge of Allegiance was certainly something that he was very well known for. And so this exhibit has been in the works for about a year now, and Mark has been working hard gathering awards and newspaper clippings and photographs and all kinds of things that we have in the archives surrounding the time of Red Skelton's doing the pledge. Now, he recorded this Pledge of Allegiance to do on his television show in December of 1968, and it was aired on January 14th, exactly 50 years ago, on January 14th, 1969. However, Red thought of this in September of 1967, and we know that because there's a letter that Red wrote to his wife at the time. Her name was Georgia, and he called her Little Red, and she called him Big Red. And he wrote her a letter nearly every day, as he did with his first wife, Edna, and then his final wife, Lothian. He was a big letter writer, and he would write them. They were love letters. He would talk about his feelings for them, but he would also kind of talk about just musings of the day, what he had done that day, things he was thinking about, and they were quite long, extensive letters. But this particular letter, written in September of 1967, was when this was a turbulent time in the United States. The Vietnam War was going on, people protesting the war were burning flags, and there was a lot of civil unrest in the country. And Red was a very, very patriotic person, and this was very disturbing to Red. And he was concerned, and he wrote this in his letter to Georgia, and he said, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I feel like people don't really know what they're saying when they say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think that maybe on my show, I should do something and explain the meaning of each word. And then he continued on through the letter, writing basically what he said on his show a year and a half later. I, me, an individual, a committee of one. Where he explains each of the words, and he goes on through the letter and does this. And to me, that was really kind of the linchpin of the exhibit, was just showing how much earlier and how much thought he had put into this. And when it came time to record it on his show, as many of you may know, he ultimately credited it to a teacher from the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. And one of the things Red was worried about is because when he was a little boy, Under God wasn't in the Pledge of Allegiance. Under God was added, I think in the 1940s, the words Under God was added to the pledge. And there was a lot of talk about prayer in schools, and Red was worried that people might think this was a prayer and decide to eliminate it from recitation in the schools. So that was a big concern of his. So that's one reason he credited the pledge to an educator, because he felt like it was important that teachers knew how he felt and that he felt this was a very important thing to stay in school. So he called out his teacher, Mr. Laswell, who actually was the principal of the Harrison School when Red Skelton would have been there. But as it turns out, Mr. Laswell didn't actually recite the pledge. Red created that on his own, but it kind of has stood the test of time, and Mr. Laswell was a real person. And in the exhibit, there's a whole panel dedicated to Mr. Laswell and his role, and it talks about the timeline and how much notoriety the pledge got after Red recited it, with a record produced by Columbia Records and parchment scrolls. And it shows Red with a giant pile of letters. He got over 400,000 requests for a copy of the Pledge of Allegiance after he recited it on his television show. And the exhibit will be up in the museum through September 8th. So lots of opportunities for you to stop in and see this exhibit. The first Sunday of every month is Free Sunday, so bring everybody and your family. It's free day to come in the museum the first Sunday of every month from noon to 5. You can come check it out. And there's a special video that's going to be previewing here in just a few minutes, and that will be showing in the museum as well during the entire duration of the exhibit. But I just want to tell you a little bit about what we have going on. We have several other events that will be following this during the Year of the Pledge. During the rendezvous, we're going to be showing a patriotic skit that Red did called Christmas 1777, and that will be shown at the rendezvous in the dining tent on Saturday. And then on Flag Day, June 14th, we'll be doing another show similar to this one, with other speakers and involving the American Legion, talking about flag etiquette and rules with the flag. And then 4th of July parade, we're going to have a special pledge float, and our festival is July 19th and 20th, where we'll be celebrating the pledge. And will culminate on September 8th, and that was declared National Pledge of Allegiance Day by George Bush in 1989. And so that will end the Year of the Pledge for us here at the museum. I hope you're able to celebrate with this on several occasions as we go through 2019, the Year of the Pledge. And now let's enjoy. I would like to invite the students from Tecumseh Harrison Elementary School up on stage. Since Red Skelton attended the Harrison School, we partnered with Principal John O'Connor and the students at Tecumseh Harrison School to recreate Red's iconic Pledge of Allegiance in a video that we put together last week. Some of the students here tonight are in the video. We invited all students at Tecumseh Harrison School to join us here tonight to say the pledge. So we're going to watch the video And then when it comes time for the Pledge of Allegiance, we're going to pause the video, ask everyone to stand, and the students and the audience will say the Pledge of Allegiance together.
Hello, I'm John O'Connor, building principal at Tecumseh Harrison Elementary in Vincennes, Indiana. We're here today to celebrate one of our former students, Red Skelton. Red was known across America as a comedian and a patriotic man. And today we're here to celebrate something he did a little more on the serious side, which was his version of the Pledge of Allegiance. And it was important for Red, for people to understand what the words really mean.
But I had just one teacher, who was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. He says, I have been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word.
I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all my brother goods without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion. To the flag, our standard of glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because her loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts. Freedom is everybody's job. United, and as we all have to come together. States, individual communities that are united into 48 great states, 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose, all divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. Of America! And to the Republic, the state in which settled power is invested in President chosen by the people to govern. And the government is the people. It's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people. One nation, meaning so blessed by God. Indivisible, incapable of being divided. With liberty, which is freedom, and the right of power to live one's own life without threat or fear of social retaliation. And justice, the principle or quality of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means as much as it's your country, it is mine.
And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise.
Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance. Under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer, and that could be eliminated from schools too?
Wouldn't it be great? Every school in America made Red Skelton's Pledge of Allegiance for their students. Then, everyone would know just how wonderful our country is.
And now I'd like to introduce Mayor Joe Yocum.
Thank you, Ann, for allowing me to be part of this program this evening, and great job to Tecumseh Harrison students. It's my privilege tonight to present a proclamation on behalf of Red's Pledge. City of Vincennes Office of Mayor Proclamation. To all whom these presents may come, greetings. Whereas Red Skelton, as a young boy, remembers his school days in Vincennes, Indiana, that included a special lesson from an educator, Mr. James S. Loswell. The lesson was the meaning of the words of the Pledge of Allegiance, and whereas Red Skelton pays tribute to the educator, Mr. James S. Laswell, by crediting him and giving significance to the words of the Pledge of Allegiance, and whereas Red shared the lesson on national television displayed in special exhibits in the Red Skelton Museum of American Comedy. Now therefore be it resolved by the Honorable Joe Yoakum, Mayor of the City of Vincennes, that the day January 14, 2019 be declared Red Skelton Pledge of Allegiance Day.
And now I'm really, really grateful, but a few months ago I asked the Lincoln High School band if they thought they could possibly learn Red's White and Blue March. Many of you might not know it, but Red was not only a comedian and a patriot, he was also an artist and a composer and an author. He wrote many, many marches, and probably the most famous of his marches was Red's White and Blue March. And now, for the first time that I've ever heard it played live, Lincoln High School marching band with Red's White and Blue March. you saw earlier, we're going to be posting it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and so you can all enjoy it there, and please share it with your friends. We'd like to get the word out. So after we retire the colors, the band is going to play Red's White and Blue March one more time as you exit, kind of our marching out music. But I want to thank you again for coming, and please come by and see us at the museum and check out the exhibit. Thank you again.